Hello, I'm Steve Graham, the head of innovation and transformation for NEC. And today I want to talk to you about the need for speed. I've had experience working at startups below HunchBuzz and The Insider, Signal 41, but also a lot of big corporations such as Microsoft and Telstra, KPMG. And it's fascinating in terms of how quickly things have changed and the speed of change. I used to work with Pitney Bowes, which was, Fortune 100 and in good to great in terms of a reference in terms of what they've accomplished. However, Pitney Bowes was totally aligned to the postal system, and we know what their fate has been. Alpine Electronics, well, it was kind of cool back in the day to have a 6 CD changer in your trunk, but that's not that cool any longer. So a lot of speed and change of technology has disrupted the market. And that's what I want to talk to you today about: innovation and change. Speed of disruption wasn't an issue in 1958, or for that matter, in the 1990s. The average lifespan of a company listed in the S&P 500 was 61 years. So once you made it, you were pretty set. However, this change isn't new, but the pace is. Today's cycles of obsolescence are real. The average lifespan of a company listed in the S&P 500 is 17 years or so, and reducing quickly. These disruption curves are much shorter, as you can see in the graphic. McKinsey believes that in 2027, 75% of companies listed in the S&P 500 will have disappeared. So the question is, are you planning for obsolescence? Do you have planned obsolescence? I love this comic. Instead of risking anything new, let's play it safe by continuing our slow decline into obsolescence. So effectively, one of the things that we have to deal with to avoid that is effectively is speed. The organizations that survive the future will be those that are capable of changing as fast as change itself, said Gary Hamel. Very hard to do, very ambitious, but something people should start thinking about. There's a great example. The Kiwis were up 8-1 and probably had a mindset of, we got this. However, as many of us know on this call, Oracle team, well, USA, otherwise known as Australia, with all the participants, found some extraordinary speed to mow down Emirates, New Zealand, and retain the America's Cup. And Oracle's remarkable comeback came with what they did in their downtime in less than a couple days, and they beat the Kiwis 9-8. A lot of that was due to speed, adaptation, and working within tight time constraints, which I'll try to reflect in this conversation. Speed is one thing. The other is the time constraints in which you work within that. This is a classic example from Envision, and they shared a story about Red Bull, and they talked about performance and how speed increases with time constraints. They took a lot of top athletes that they sponsor from different parts of the world, a lot of Americans there, but some fascinating athletes in terms of what they do. And effectively, what they asked all of these athletes to do is go as fast as you can, just go for it. And as you see this graph, they went for it, but after a short period of time, their performance decreased. However, when they were given a target time in terms of which to achieve an outcome, their performance went up because they understood what they needed to do within a certain period of time, and the results went up significantly. Speed is the new currency of business. There's no two ways about it. One of the most successful companies in the world is Salesforce.com, and this comes from Mark Benioff. Here within NEC, the CEO has said, the NEC of the past will not survive. Our survival depends on transforming NEC's culture, developing the capability to respond to changes on the front lines, and acting quickly. And I guess that's the key point that I'm trying to leave or highlight throughout this demonstration, is that we really have to figure out how we move fast. Our findings provide clear guidance. Digital leaders tend to move 4 times faster and with twice as much the power as their peers. This is according to some research that McKinsey has done. So what do? Well, we have to have the ability to experiment. And I don't think that's necessarily uncommon in organizations. I think organizations are starting to adapt ways of experimenting, and moving beyond skunk projects. The ability to manage complex multi-company systems, that's a challenge, and I think that's a challenge for upper management in terms of how they effectively connect those dots. However, the ability to mobilize is often in the organization in terms of management or lower management or teams, their ability to work with one another. And lastly, this is really important, the ability to read and act on signals. And this has come up from the Boston Consulting Group, that these four aspects are really critical to speed. I'll share a story with you from a Spanish company called Zara, and they're one of the probably wealthiest, highly capitalized companies in the world. And Zara has a super fast supply chain that can take products from design to sales in 4 to 6 weeks, with 24,000 products developed a year. So the reality here, though, is that they changed the game. Typically, release cycles in terms of fashion within the industry was a 6 to 9 to 12 month cycle. They turned that cycle into 4 to 6 weeks, and you could understand the competitive advantage in what they've done and how they've done it. Here's a great example. In 2 days, Miko walked into a Zara store in Tokyo, and Elaine walked into a Zara store in San Francisco. Michelle walked into a Zara store in Toronto, and Giselle walked into a Zara store in Frankfurt. And what they all wanted was a pink scarf. So the outcome of having the ability to have frontline engagement and a system that was able to put out short production cycles of product ended up providing, within 7 days, 2,000 Zara stores globally were stocked with pink scarves. 500,000 pink scarves were then sold out in 3 days. So that gives you a real sense in terms of organizations, not just technology-based organizations, but even in the fashion industry, the impact of speed. Harley-Davidson was really struggling in 2010, and their stock price, I think, crashed from $75 to $8. And they had to start doing things differently because they had this brand recognition, and there's an acceptance that people would just wait for their product. But things were changing. And effectively, the organization adapted to get a product that sometimes took 18 months to 2 weeks. Quite remarkable, but the reality is speed counts, particularly when customer expectations have changed over the last decade. Back in 1995, there was a bestseller, The Discipline of Market Leaders. I think I read that in the early 2000s by Michael Tracy, and I found it kind of influenced my thinking a bit. And they talked effectively about you had to be a leader, either product leadership, operational excellence, or customer intimacy. And it's well documented, well founded, and written in 1995. However, one of the things they talked about was a minimum threshold to compete. And what I think has happened in the last 10 years is effectively that threshold has lifted to another level. So effectively, you have to have a high level of competence in all of these areas and the ability to move at speed if you want to compete effectively. When I take this same analogy to the need to move at speed, it kind of highlights the modern day architecture in terms of our technology environments. And I think this is one of the big things that when you hear digital transformation, effectively they're trying to say we have to adapt quickly to the environment and be able to respond without having to rebuild a system. I remember working with government accounts, and some of the big government agencies would say, well, we want to change a field in this system, and that would take them 9 months. And I'm like, just a field in the system? Yeah, because of the way it was built. And in due respect, I think the architecture of the past, you had to build it that way. However, in the last 10 years, I would say things have evolved quite rapidly. Back in the day, we were, in pre-2000, things were vertically based, tightly integrated technology. However, today, to compete effectively, things are much more horizontal and loosely coupled technology that enables you to effectively plug and play. That whole concept really has come into the vernacular, I think, of business today, where we have to adapt quickly. Another analogy, if I think about an organization, the difference between a traditional legacy-based organization and a startup, what I refer to as within these old style organization, they're there for the long run. It could be a government agency, and effectively they hire long distance runners, where a startup might look at a sprinter. And effectively the difference is a long distance runner is they have slow twitch muscle fibers, 90 to 95% of slow twitch fibers, whereas sprinting is fast twitch muscle fibers, 60, 80% of the twitch fibers. Runners' bodies are lean in terms of a long distance running, and typically a sprinter has a heavier build. There's a difference in stride. A sprinter is more explosive form of running, and the mid intensity for long periods and versus high intensity for short periods. And I guess that's where I'm kind of contrasting the styles, that within an organization, I'm not saying that there's no need for that long distance running, but as COVID-19 has highlighted, we have to have the ability to sprint as well. So whether that's specialized team or a capability within the organization to do things rapidly versus an ethos of an organization is really critical to adapting to change. And I guess the question is, can you be great at both? And I would say not really, unless you're a tuna, which a friend has pointed out. So, the reality, speed is really critical in terms of moving to adapt to customer expectations. There's a book by Jim Collins, which a lot of people have heard about good to great and how we have to adapt and be on the bus together. And this quote from the book is, when facing chaos and uncertainty, and you cannot possibly predict what's coming around the corner, your best strategy is to have a busload of people who can adapt to and perform brilliantly no matter what comes next. Great vision without great people is irrelevant. So one of the big aspects of that book is getting everyone on the bus to be able to go and move in the same direction. One of the counterpoints, to speed is the enemy of creativity, and I've heard that many times. An important and even growing part of work is solving problems. Most of the time, these problems are unique, that have never appeared before, which require creativity. However, creativity does take time, but how much? And I'm not saying that we should do away with creativity at all. Clearly, that's a big part of innovation and change. But I think the effective use of speed can really enable us to do what we need to do in a shorter period of time. Here's a video that highlights the need for speed.
The lessons I've learned after so many Ebola outbreaks in my career are: be fast, have no regrets. You must be the first mover. The virus will always get you if you don't move quickly, and you need to be prepared. And I say this, one of the great things in emergency response, and anyone who's involved in emergency response will know this, if you need to be right before you move, you will never win. Perfection is the enemy of the good when it comes to emergency management. Speed trumps perfection. And the problem in society we have at the moment is everyone is afraid of making a mistake. Everyone is afraid of the consequence of error. But the greatest error is not to move. The greatest error is to be paralyzed by the fear of failure. And I think that's the single biggest lesson I've learned in Ebola responses in the past.
At NEC, we decided in March, when the COVID-19 virus appeared, and we were looking at how can we help and what difference could we make, we decided that one of the biggest impacts we could use with the technology and with our partners is to develop a quarantine platform. When others at the same time were developing contact tracing, we put all our energy in how to most effectively develop a quarantine platform. And with COVID-19, speed was a fundamental constraint in terms of how quickly we had to do things. Our focus was speed to outcomes. We wanted to find a way to effectively capture new ideas and innovate as we were running through our sprint, and partners through the journeys of getting the right people on board within the areas that we may not have had the capability, and we combined it with the capability of what we had, our IP, our brand, then the ability to integrate and scale with a front-end great design user experience. This is effectively what we did in 10 days.
Hello, I'm Steve Graham, Head of Innovation and Transformation for NEC. We're all aware of the escalating events around us and the potential impact on infrastructure and our capacity to deliver services. 7 days ago, I worked with 3 other Wellington-based organizations to stand up a team of 10 to run a design and build process with the intent of having something ready for production by March 27th. Everything we've done is built on the following principles: location tracking, identity verification, symptom monitoring, triage, case escalation, and case intervention. This is a highly scalable cloud-first approach based on a great mobile-first user experience. And we've also embedded facial recognition for identity, and it's integrated into a case management and a contact center solution.
So in response to COVID-19, we initiated an innovation task force. We brought a team in together for a vision in terms of how we could build a quarantine platform, how we could use technology that we had in-house, and how we could partner with other organizations to develop a mobile-first self-isolation check-in and tracking platform to assist in stopping the spread of COVID-19. So effectively, we developed a pre-production working prototype of a solution enabled by NEC, world-leading provider of facial recognition, AWS in terms of a serverless backend that was secure and scalable, Salesforce, because we had the ability to configure and adapt depending on the use case. And then we evolved the product by adding Juniper Mist, student tracking, and geofencing. That included bands, the beacons like a Fitbit that enabled people to be able to social distancing and also to be able to contact them to make sure they were aware of the boundaries in terms of how far they could go if they didn't have their phone with them, and an easy to use mobile application that works on the iOS, Android, and PWA. And effectively, here's a quick high-level overview of the solution that we built in 10 days.
As efforts to contain the COVID-19 crisis step up, it is essential that we all do everything we can to help stop the spread of the virus. NEC, working with partners worldwide, has developed NEC iQuarantine, a mobile app that will allow our amazing healthcare professionals and government agencies to help contain the spread of COVID-19 in real time. NEC iQuarantine allows the community to self-assess and check in with authorities on their health. If they are showing symptoms, it prioritises their situation so critical frontline professionals can act promptly. It also allows real-time management using push notifications to people who have come into contact with someone who has COVID-19. NEC iQuarantine also allows us to identify where there's growth of the virus in communities, utilising a mix of technologies such as NEC facial recognition, AI, real-time cloud and data management in a highly configurable and scalable way. Our health and protection services can access NEC iQuarantine to easily assess individual case information, including the status and priority of those in self-isolation. In collaboration with Salesforce and AWS, the app is now ready to help people here and around the world in ways never seen before, to ease the pressure on our frontline healthcare and emergency services and prioritise the safety of those most vulnerable in our society. NEC Australia, orchestrating a brighter world remotely.